Good afternoon, Karina Manashil. Welcome back on VH Berries.
It's such a pleasure to be back, Victor. Thank you for having me.
I am extremely grateful because you're steering the light from its slumber with dimmer switches that put the temperature of the room as well as mine at risk due to the repeated emotions flips in your productions. How are you doing today?
What a nice thing to say. I'm doing wonderful, better now, getting to hear such cool words.
You are feeling better now, Karina Manashil, and I luckily have a spare of that controller to find my way out of the inky tunnels and witness your work as the executive producer of the upcoming Kaijo content, while I wait as a passive, non-executive consumer.
Aw, Victor, you're a part of everything, I swear. It's not fair to say that you're on the non-executive producer. I feel like you're a part of everything that I do.
Absolutely, Karina Manashil. I might be in all of the work that you're producing, and the ingredients of Kaijo are 5 letters, 2 syllables, and 1 founder equipped with a phone and a mobile plan to call the best talents without any limitations. Can you tell us a little bit more about this new venture that took and entered the scene during last summer on July 2024?
Gosh, it's honestly, even hearing the dates of how long we've been putting this together is a really lovely thing to hear. I would love to. So Kaijo is a new venture that we've created where essentially our concept is to continue in on all of the incredible work that we've been doing with Kid Cudi and create opportunities to work with other artists and athletes in building their IP. So a lot of Kaijo has been a reaction to where the business has gone, where consolidations have happened across different conglomerates, less is being made, it's all more specific. So to create opportunities where content doesn't have to be restricted just to film and TV, but can be done across publishing, gaming, merchandising, and finding all of the ways in which stories are being told in a modern era, and offering those opportunities to talent very similarly in the properties that we've done so far, but that really speak to the culture.
You are speaking to the culture, Karina Manashil. And before we step into the Kaijo riverboat, we first need to remember the PIN code of the phone that I just mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
And in your case, the number could be 0712, because this is the pleasant day in which you learned your Emmy nomination on July 12 of 2023.
Aww. I guess summer is my window for good news. I think that's what it's come down to. My dad has always said that I'm a creature of the sun. I get my most happiness when the most sunshine is on me, and now I think you've just proven it. I have to call my dad after this. Yeah, that was, I will say, was such a cool experience, because I know you and I had spoken about Intergalactic which of all the projects that we did together with Kid Cudi, there were so many we were so proud of, but Intergalactic was the one that was something that was our true DNA, in the sense that we came up with the idea together and created that from start to finish as a collective, with what ended up being hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people all over the world through COVID finishing that project. But to get the Emmy nomination for that, and for something that we were so proud of, and for me, there was so much life that happened through Intergalactic. One of the funny stories about the show is that when we were first creating the characters and we're in the writer's room, I was pregnant. So the reason why there's a character, Karina, in the show who's pregnant was after that situation that I was in. But by the end, they had credits for the production babies. So all the kids that were born during the time it took to put Intergalactic together. And both my kids were production babies. So both of them were on there. And for me, for Intergalactic to have represented those formative years, the start of being a producer, the indication of what my relationship with Kid Cudi has been in terms of putting the content that we really believe in forward, the beautiful partnership with Netflix, Kenya Barris, Ian Edelman, Maurice Williams, Fletch Moles, Mike Palank, Mike Moon, Elizabeth Porter, the list goes on and on of these. It was all to say, from all of those sources that have felt both that have felt transformative for me through my personal and professional life, for that moment then to be acknowledged was a really, really special thing. It meant a lot to us.
Absolutely, Karina Manashil. And that production company called Kaijo is about to reinvent intellectual property, which is IP, into KMP, Karina Manashil Properties, with no trespassing allowed, except screw-whales like the Siberian chipmunk and alpine marmot.
Oh my gosh, I love the language you choose. You're really a poet. It's beautiful. That really is our goal, though. So much of what we've been acknowledging is that, and I guess to start here, a lot of where my sources of inspiration have come in terms of things that I've loved throughout the time that I was a kid was watching anime. So my sister and I would watch Toonami. We thought we were the only people on the planet, which now in the modern era we've come to learn was everybody who was engaging with Dragon Ball Z and Cowboy Bebop and Gundam and Lupin the Third and all of these shows, Sailor Moon, Pokemon, and daytime TV, Yu-Gi-Oh! All of these shows that were running, but we weren't sharing the experience with our peers because we thought it was an isolating one. And to have been so affected by these different properties growing up, and so unforgettably so, and now to be in this opportunity where I'm free to sort of follow the sources of inspiration and allow the talent that are resonating with me is conversations about similar stories. I feel like anime has linked the world, and in speaking to culture, it's not surprising how many artists and athletes are true fans of anime or have been inspired by it. So it is really interesting to say, IP is the wave of Kaijo and this idea of creating IP, but so much of our inspiration has been on the backs of IP that we've grown up really loving, and hopes of creating an impact that could somewhat parallel or pay homage to the things that have meant so much to us.
Furthermore, Karina Manashil, I learned that the word Kaijo refers to a Japanese term that roughly means on the sea. What is your personal meaning of Kaijo?
It's such a great question. So it's interesting. Kaijo, for me, obviously I love Japanese culture. Kaiju is a very common term with kaiju monsters like Godzilla, etc. But what Kaijo is for me is actually an indication of family. It's almost like a little secret. So when I was a baby, I have a sister who's a year and a half older, and she couldn't say Karina, so she would call me Kai. So Kai is in reference to my old family, the family that raised me and all of the generations that came before. And Joe refers to Jordana, my daughter. So Joe then represents my new family and all of the generations to come. So Kaijo is, in like my wink, it makes me think of kaiju, but in what it describes for me is family.
Kaijo is describing the family, Karina Manashil, and I am very curious about the exact moment you had that production company idea, because, for example, you registered the domain name kaijo.gg a month before the launch on June 13. When was the starting point?
You know what? I give credit to my husband for it. There was a moment where, because we had financiers that were turning over and this business was changing so much, that there was an opportunity for me to open my mindset in terms of how do I want to structure my life. And my husband was the one who inspired me and said, well, why don't you take this moment and bet on yourself? And you've proven such an incredible model in terms of how you can work with artists. And I'd done it in my time at WME. I'd done it, of course, working with Scott and continuing to work with Scott through Mad Solar. But the idea that it could open up further and open up to more of my passions. So he was really the driving force. I think he was the springboard that I needed to have that self-assuredness to take the moment to believe in what I could do by my own hands, and it's really felt good. It's been a wonderful thing thanks to him.
It's been a wonderful thing, Karina Manashil, and Kaijo has a captain, which is yourself, and was also recently joined by a team of sailors that we could call Grass. Can you tell us a little bit more about this recent update?
Yeah, so Grass helped us form Kaijo. They were incredible partners in helping us build out the company, and they had put an infinite amount of belief in us to be able to execute on these projects and work with the talent and the level of talent that we'd been talking about. So they became a big springboard in giving us the momentum and belief and backing to build out the company.
Absolutely, Karina Manashil, Grass is bringing a lot of support to your idea and vision. And one very inspiring concept is the one called the verticals, because you plan to create more than just pictures with publishing, merchandising, gaming and live. Can you tell us a little bit more about the upcoming projects that you are planning for the future, as well as your current first step?
Yeah, I would love to. It's so interesting you bring that up, and I actually think the best way to explain how we're planning to tackle these verticals is by going back and explaining a project that we're working on right now. So this is with Kid Cudi, and it dates back actually to his music. So with Cudi, he always had these two characters that he spoke about it as a musician. He had Mr. Rager, who he referenced in Intergalactic, and he had this character Moon Man. And Moon Man, he always saw as this superhero version, the light to the Mr. Rager, who was his rage and darkness. And he had this idea with Moon Man to tell a story about a modern day superhero based out of Cleveland, where he's from. But the idea of building out that story in a cinematic sense, whether it was as a series or as a feature off the bat, is very unlikely. It would be incredibly expensive. And the predominant feeling of the studios is if they're going to make that level of investment, we should do it on an existing IP that already has a fan base involved. So had we just focused on film and TV with the property like that, we wouldn't have been able to get Moon Man off the ground. But that said, as we were talking about it, Scott is very inspired by comics. He has a really cool experience where, as a kid, he used to go to the comic book stores, and the one that became his favorite was Scud the Disposable Assassin, simply because he would look at Scud and read it as Scott Mescuddy, which is his name. So Scud became his superhero. And he thought, well, why not create that opportunity for the kids? So we partnered with Kyle Higgins, who is a preeminent comic creator. He had worked on Batman, he'd rebooted Power Rangers, but he'd also created his own original superhero, Radiant Black, for Image Comics, and was working on their Massiverse. And with him, we partnered and created Moon Man as a comic book. And what was so interesting on the heels of that, working with Image Comics was extraordinary. There was venues to talk about it at New York Comic Con, but by virtue of creating the comic, the conversations over adaptation and other opportunities with it became more readily available. Jordan Peele came on to produce the adaptation with us, so we're working on that. We were able to build an action figure for it and high price point merchandising. It was a very limited capsule, but something that could go alongside launch. And that model became one where talent plus concept plus publishing was enough to open up at more verticals than if you were just to go into film and television alone. And I think the reason for that being, we're in a, pendulum will swing back and forth, but at this very moment, it's a little bit of a tough moment in film and television. The conglomerates have all consolidated, which means that there's less opportunities to sell, and then there's more risk on what they're going to be buying, which means that they're more careful. So the idea of being inherently quite creative with these companies is a little bit more limited now than ordinarily it could be. So that was very much the foundation of Kaijo, was this idea that instead of just saying we're going to do film or television and you take something out and if it doesn't sell, well, that's the end of your concept. It just goes back to the shelf. Are there ways to create that can live outside of that, but instead support a venture in those spaces? So a couple of things that have come from that frame of mind. One, with Kid Cudi as well, we're working on his follow-up to Moon Man, which is a comic book for Webtoon. So we're engaging in Webtoon in those conversations, which would be our first foray into digital publishing and vertical scroll as the preeminent way into narrative. But we're also working with some other artists on comics. So there's working with a high-level basketball player on his original idea that's inspired by anime. And there's other pieces of IP out of public domain especially that we're looking to break through a publishing lens right now as well.
In definitive, Karina Manashil, what you're seeking to accomplish with Kaijo is a vast and complex trek, very similar to putting the man on the moon or the MaXXXine on the Mount Lee at the peak of the Santa Monica Mountains.
It's incredibly kind. It's incredibly kind. I know this sounds, it's so funny because this concept sounds incredibly cringe, but it's not meant to be. I think it only sounds cringe because we've all become to some extent jaded. But there was a moment where when I was an agent at WME, we went to Montreal for the Just for Laughs comedy show. And I was there. Jeff Ross was one of my clients at the time, and he's remained one of my very, very, very close friends. And he was doing a roast in Montreal. And he brings me up for the roast. And one of his questions while everybody's getting roasted is, why are you an agent? Why do you want to be an agent? And I said, well, I love to play any part in helping make somebody's dream come true. To which the room responded with like a sea of boos. It's like, you're an agent. Are you crazy? There's no love. You guys are like corporate. You're the monsters. It was that outrage, the outrage response to what I was saying, which was so funny, but I meant it. I feel like in my life, and I know you and I have talked about this, I had such a fortunate foundation in the sense that I realized it when I was young. Oh, if I didn't have a friend in the world, it wouldn't matter because I had my family. And that feeling has permeated my whole life. I've always felt well, as long as I have my family, I'm okay. All that I'm doing right now, I want to do the best that I can, but it's a happy experience because at my core, at my foundation, I'm settled. So for me, when I look at Kaijo or I look through the different arcs of my career as I've been coming up, that feeling that I had as a fresh agent in Montreal, being, you know, the laughing stock of the moment is still how I do feel. I'm excited about what I do because I'm excited to work with artists that inspire me and that, you know, artists where if I can play any tiny iota of a part in helping make their vision a reality, that's a blessing, that's a gift, that's an honor, and that's something that I really do want to be a part of.
Absolutely, Karina Manashil. You were just sharing that memorable moment at that festival in which people were booing you. And I would love to discuss about a feature film called MaXXXine, in which you played the role of the executive producer after the two first feature films called X and Pearls. Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah. So this continued an incredible journey that Ty West had welcomed us into, and A24 and Sam Levinson, Ashley Levinson, and Kevin Turin and Harrison Christ. As a collective, all of them had opened their arms to us when it started with X, in welcoming us not only to allow Scott to play Jackson, but for us to produce with them. And MaXXXine was very much the continuation from that. In our last conversation, I know we talked about X was going to shoot in New Zealand during COVID, and it was back when they had the 2-week quarantine. And while they were in quarantine, Ty West and Mia Goth wrote Pearl, sent it to A24, and had it approved, greenlit to go back to back, to shoot X and Pearl back to back. And once those films were done, they were able to shoot MaXXXine, and that was out of the COVID world. It was in Los Angeles. They were able to bring all of this iconic talent to the forefront in what they were putting together. And it was really a thrill and a pleasure to be a part of. And to this day, our relationship with Ty has been such an important one to us. We actually just worked with him on a short film that's inspired by a new song that Scott has written, and he wrote and directed the piece with Scott and Kiernan Shipka starring. So, you know, MaXXXine and X and Pearl as a collective have all meant so much to us foundationally, and it's just so important to us to feel the trust of a filmmaker at the caliber of Ty West welcoming us into his party. And now it's been a thrill to get to continue that relationship.
It's been a thrill to continue that relationship, Karina Manashil. And the title, MaXXXine, is written with a triple X letter. And it's not a typo. It's just a Manashil Trojan horse into the English dictionary.
No, that stroke of genius from Ty, I swear, that man knows no limits. He is so cool. He is so smart. The only one I know who could live up to him on the title train is Scott himself. That's one of his gifts, is creating titles. But man, I got a kick out of that when I first saw it. It's so brilliant.
It is a brilliant name, Karina Manashil, and the trailer of MaXXXine came out around 11 months ago.
Yeah.
What are your memories of that release and your favorite moment during that creative process?
You know, my memory of the release was at the premiere, which was beautiful. It was at the Chinese theater. It was so LA. It was so kind of the twinkle of what Hollywood was that experience. But what really made me laugh is that there's so many moments, because she's on her path from being porn star to actress throughout the film. So there's a lot of references to Los Angeles and to Hollywood. And it really cracked me up how much the Hollywood lines like sold in the room. And when she referenced, or when she has her SAG card and she's doing, I mean, excuse young viewers, but she's doing lines of coke with her SAG card, the laughter in that room was immense, which was just such an LA reaction, because they knew exactly what that experience emulates or potentially even feels like. So the memories of that were really special, to see a movie that's so embedded in filmmaking, but in Los Angeles, in the Chinese theater, and having that experience was really special.
Absolutely, Karina Manashil. And after doing that feature film called MaXXXine, would you reflect back on that project and say that it was the natural evolution from Matt Solar Productions?
That's such a great question. It really was. Now, I have to give 100% full and total credit on these films to Ty, to Mia, to Jacob Jafke, to Kevin Turin, to Harrison Christ, to the team that really leaned in and conceptualized it, because Ty was not one who needed an army around him. He's a force to be reckoned with on his own. But for us, to answer that question well, Matt Solar had always represented a reaction for the culture. Scott, as an artist, was in a constant dialogue ever since his formation over 15 years ago, where he was talking to the kids. First, they were his contemporaries, then they may be younger. Like that dialogue is something that he's very familiar to him. And the thought with Matt Solar was to continue that dialogue. So Intergalactic is an adult animated film, a Black romance that's linked to an album. X, Pearl, and MaXXXine take the genre of horror and make it period. X and MaXXXine, I would say, were our rambunctious ones, our two kids who are, off on the town and up to mischief. And Pearl was an actor's piece to no end with Mia Goth. And the short that we're shooting is similar. It follows suit. There's a music component to it. There's vampires. It's very cool. It's very sexy. The next film we're about to shoot, similarly so too. It's another horror film. Scott loves horrors, so it's very natural for us to continue playing in this space. But this next project is from filmmaker Adam Mortimer, and Scott is going to play the lead of it. Jessica Roth is playing the co-lead. And essentially, I describe it as artsy punk rock horror. It has a lot of very deep messages in dealing with grief and what grief can look like and what it can put you through. But it's done through such a slasher, wild, spooky, atmospheric lens. So I do believe that each of these films are yet another reflection of what the company stands for.
This is a reflection of what the company stands for, Karina Manashil. And last time we spoke was on November the 10th of 2022, and exactly 244 days, or 8 months after that date, you got that Emmy nomination for Intergalactic. And if we follow the logic, history will repeat itself in 244 days on November 4th.
Oh my gosh.
For whether that horror feature film or maybe for Slime.
You like, you could hear my heart beat when you say the word slime. Slime, that's what Slime does for me. We've been making such incredible progress on Slime. I am so proud of it. Every minute working with Jaron Braxton is one that inspires me and teaches me. He's an incredible artist, an incredible person. Through him, before AI was an outward conversation, he was the first person to show it to me and teach me what it was. through him, we're meeting companies in Japan and creating new relationships with people all over the world. I love this project with every fiber of my being. And I'm really proud of the steps that we're making, the sequences that he's built so far, the cast that we're putting together. Like, Slime is just, it's in my heart, deep and pure and true.
This project has a very deep resonance with you, Karina Manashil, and you are working alongside director Jaron Braxton and writer Brian Ash. Can you tell us a little bit more about that storyline that includes Muna kidnapping Glenn?
Yes, I would love to. So to start how this came together, because it's worth mentioning, I was introduced to Jaron very much at the start of Mad Solar. It was on the heels of Intergalactic, what became a foundational piece for us, because Intergalactic, of course, was animated, and I, as you heard, grew up on anime. Animation is something that has meant so much to me in storytelling from, that's just from birth. Like, that was the chosen medium. And so to meet Jaron, who is such an interesting artist, his whole backstory is incredibly interesting, because he basically grew up wanting to create music and then thought, let me make some music videos. So he self-taught himself animation, but his animation blew up. So he then won Sundance with his first short, went back to the festivals every year since, but then simultaneously became a hype artist. So he had designed runways for Virgil Abloh. His artwork was featured by Christie's with Takashi Murakami. He has galleries in Harajuku, Shibuya, Times Square. Like, he's done music videos for The Weeknd, etc. So he's so interesting and exciting, and had created a precipice foundationally on both sides. So when we met, he had said that he had a feature that he wants to direct, that a feature debut idea. And together we found Brian Ash, who was on Boondocks and Black Dynamite. So very much the sensibility of what the story we were trying to tell, who wrote the script, and Hammerstone financed it. So they came in at that stage to finance it. And you can kind of hear it in the storytelling, but the spirit of Slime is very, I guess, corporate rebel, maybe, because to explain how animation works on the U.S. landscape, the way that it's perceived is that animation, and not incorrectly so to some extent, but historically it's very expensive, it takes a long time, requires a ton of bodies, and therefore U.S. studios tend to err toward Pixar aesthetics because we know they're palatable, 4-quadrant because we know it can bring in the most box office and return on investment, etc. But what Jaron was exploring wasn't like that. It was adult-facing, sonically driven. It's a monster movie. It's really wild. And to speak to for the culture, it's just completely reminiscent of that. And his artwork to begin with is inspired by that and reminiscent of that. So as we were putting it together, the thought of running this through the traditional U.S. system isn't one that really made sense. But Jaron and young artists, as you're finding today, they don't need all of the resources that were previously promised by these studios. It's give me and my friends an indie budget and we can make this film. So with that knowledge, we started working with Hammerstone on Slime. Brian wrote the script, it's incredible. I know I described some of the thematics of it, but essentially what we're following is that we're in a near future world and the world is depleted of water. That's the scarcest resource. In your cold open, you see a monster creature, alien creature, who's secreting a slime for a Bedouin tribe that creates bounty, nature out of nothingness. And in the cold open, that creature is hunted, unfortunately shot, and all that the people who have gone after it are left with is its slime. And what comes to happen in the story is that our protagonist, Muna, does this paid medical trial, being told that there's nothing harmful. She's injected with the alien creature's slime, and throughout the film is transforming into a hybrid creature and is on the run from the organization that did this to her. So it very much is body transformation, monster movie. It's fun. Again, Sonic is going to be a huge component of it. The visuals are very wild, very unique to his style, very video game cutscene inspired, which also speaks to our generation who plays games and watches anime and knows those visual languages and are open to seeing things that are a little bit different than traditional US animated fare. But yeah, so that's the kind of foundation of slime.
This is the foundation of slime. And in conclusion, I am looking forward to witness Muna and Glenn, as well as the Kaijo mania taking over the market. And I hope to evolve soon from my current position of Kaijo's global chief passive non-executive consumer specialist, 99-month maternity leaves replacement internship. Thank you very much, Karina Manashil.
I swear you spread light constantly. You were such a joy. Thank you so much for talking with me and for continually creating such a happy experience for me. I truly, truly adore it. Thank you.